So now we are going to discuss on the topic managing errors and exceptions. So while executing a Java code, there can be different types of errors that can happen. One could be the coding error by the programmer. Then errors could be out due to the wrong input or any other incidents that could happen. Now basically what happens in a case of an error occurring is that the Java program will result in an exception, or it will throw an error. So let's look into that particular case. So basically, if you look at this program, you have a class called my class. It has got a main function over here, and we are creating an array, my numbers over here, which is storing the integers 1, 2, and 3. And basically that would make this array size 3. Now we are printing a statement over here, a system.out.println my numbers of size 10. Obviously, we can see that this array is not defined its size, and basically it contains only 3 elements, so it cannot print out an array of size 10. So basically when we run or execute this particular code, we can see that it leads to the creation of a thing called exception. See this thing over here, the exception in thread main java.lang array index out of bounds exception. So basically index 10 out of bounds for length 3 in this particular program. So as seen already, we can understand the fact that when Java encounters an error, it normally generates an error message, and the technical term for this will be an exception. So we say that Java will throw an exception or an error statement. So as a precautionary measure, if you want to create a Java program whereby you want to try out some code and you don't want an error statement to be generated, or you have a particular section, you have a very large program, but you don't want the entire program to collapse because of this particular code that you're inserting, you can use a try and catch element. So basically what happens here is you have a particular code that can be brought into this try loop, and if an error comes out of this try loop, you have a loop here called catch, which will report or a statement on how to handle these errors, or whatever we are expecting it to deliver, it will display that particular statement. So please note that you have a try and a catch exception is loop over here. So we are looking into this particular same program that we had discussed previously. So we are having this situation over here. So what we are doing here is we have this class over here, and now we know that this particular code generates an exception, so we place it under the try loop. So if you look over here, it begins with the try statement and the bracket closes. Now then you have the catch exception e. Now if an exception is raised, it is supposed to display what? Something went wrong. That will happen over here. So let us try running this particular program. We are having our class over here, my class, and we have the main function. Now we already saw this program that this results in an exception or an error because of the array size issue. Now what we are going to do is we want to try out if this program is going to work, so we place it under the try loop. So try opens here and it closes. Inside that you have these two declarations, and if you want to you can have a catch statement over here, catch exception e. If an exception rises, you can have this particular statement being displayed, something went wrong. So when we try executing this program, it results in an exception, so it will definitely create that display that statement, something went wrong. Or if you want to modify it, and if I give it as error generated, if I try running it again, whatever message you want to give it, it will display it without a problem. Now this is a standard format for a catch statement. So a catch statement should have an exception pointer basically, or an identifier over here, which will be basically accessing the exception being generated, and if you're having that exception, this will be printed. So this E is important and exception keyword is important. Suppose if we don't have that, it will result in an error. So it is a standard format that you have to keep the keyword exception and an identifier E, or any other letter for that matter. It can be A or it can be E. That doesn't become a problem. So you have to have the keyword exception and the identifier given by any letter A or E or whatever it is. Another keyword that you can use over here is one called finally. And finally statement lets you execute code after try catch loop being executed, regardless of the result. That means if you have something else to be executed apart from the try and catch loop, you can place it under the finally statement and make it happen. So we'll look into a program which uses this. So if you look over here, we have this program called my class. Again, the same program. We have the try statement executed and the catch statement. And then you have this finally keyword loop over here. So it is supposed to display the statement system.out.println the try catch is finished in quotes. So basically you have that particular statement, and let us execute it and see what happens. So it is already running, and we can see that it has executed the exception and it has executed the finally statement also. So something went wrong and the try catch is finished is displayed. So we are going to take a look at another one aspect of this particular try, catch, and finally statement. So what if the try becomes successful? So what we had done in this program was we basically had a program that generated an exception or an error. We tried it running in the try loop, and then we wrote the catch statement, and then we wrote the finally statement. So what if the program becomes true? So if the program becomes true, for example, we have this statement over here in the array my numbers is 1 2 3. So basically this will be storing 3 digits and 3 integers, and basically it will be having spaces from 0 1 and 2. So if we look over here, this particular is asking to print the 10th element, or the 11th element in this particular array called my numbers, which is definitely out of bounds. So I'm trying to give it as 3, and I'm trying to run it. Again, it results in an error. Exception is generated because it is not having an array 3 as such, because this will be array 0, this will be array 1, and this will be array 2. So it definitely does not have an array 3 over here. So it definitely generates an exception, and you have this something went wrong, this exception statement, and the finally being executed. So let's make it of size 2. And when we have size 2, basically it should print the number 3, and we try executing it, and we can see that it has displayed 3 and the try catch is finished. So when the program is successful, we have this try loop being executed, and there is no exception generated, so this does not work, and the finally statement also is effective and it actually displays.